Good afternoon, everyone. The conscious universe. Now, in Theosophy, we come across phrases such as everything in the universe is conscious or all is life quite often. In this presentation, I'd like to look at some of the unseen forces at work in the universe, such as Akasha, Hoult or cosmic electricity, and Davic or angelic influences. We'll then consider the implications of this way of thinking, because beginning to explore these concepts gives us a dynamic new perspective on how we see and interact with the world and the universe around us. So the conscious universe then, the actual piece is in a summary at the end of part 1 of The Secret Doctrine, page 274, and it says, everything in the universe throughout all its kingdoms is conscious, i.e. endowed with a consciousness of its own kind and on its own plane of perception. We must remember that because we do not perceive any signs, which we can recognize of consciousness, say in stones, we have no right to say that no consciousness exists here. There is no such thing as either dead or blind matter. But then as Theosophists, maybe we already know that anyway. And take HPB's comment about stones. And I think that there's probably many of you here, sort of several certainly, that will get a feeling, a vibration from a stone, a crystal or a pebble. Even if you hold a piece of limestone in your hand and just try and feel its aura, it's amazing. It's hundreds of millions of years old, and there's a fantastic feeling about it. So to get some sort of feeling for this underlying consciousness that is within everything, I want to look at some of the core aspects of what lies behind it. And very briefly, to give an overall outline of the way that everything, life, the universe, all interacts and works together. So I've taken 5 different forces as examples to look at. I'm sure you'll probably be able to think of others, but these are just illustrations. So I'll outline them and then go into detail. So the universe is embodied consciousness. Not only do we live in a conscious universe, it is in a constant state of being and of beingness. An aspect of this state of being is that there is consciousness, but there's also matter, cosmic substance, ranging from Akasha, the 5th cosmic element, which is the air around us, and then coming down in density, coming into increasing density. It's energized by cosmic electricity. In theosophical writings, it's called by the Tibetan mystical name Hoult. And 4, it's guided by the formless Dhyanis, Devas, angelic forces. They create the blueprint, and everything is recorded by the Lipika, the recording Dhyanis. Number 5, it's all given form by the builders, the Dhyanis, Devas, angelic forces. And they create things from suns and planets at the top end through to the tiny elementals who build the physical world at the lower end. So firstly then, the universe is embodied consciousness. The basic foundation of universal consciousness is outlined in the proem of The Secret Doctrine, in the 3 fundamental propositions, especially the first one. So what underlies everything? And the first fundamental proposition tells us that there's an omnipresent, eternal, boundless, and immutable principle on which all speculation is impossible, since it transcends the power of human conception and could only be dwarfed by any human expression or similitude. It is beyond the range and reach of thought, in the words of Mandukia, unthinkable and unspeakable. It's the one absolute reality which antecedes all manifested conditioned being. This infinite and eternal cause, which is the rootless root of all that was, is, or ever shall be. It's devoid of attributes and is essentially without relation to manifested finite being. It is, again, beingness rather than being. It's quite an interesting thing to meditate on, this state of being. And I wonder if the mindfulness is part of this just being in the moment. The whole universe, also we are told, is in constant motion. And it's also referred to as the unrevealed deity, universal motion, the thrill of the creative breath in nature. It's also given various names. Parabrahm, the one reality, the absolute, first logos. And Parabrahm is essentially the field of absolute consciousness. So spirit, consciousness, and this sort of pre-cosmic ideation is the very basis of thought. It's the origin and root of force and all individual consciousness. It's the thought that lies behind everything. But once we pass in thought from this to us, HBB tells us duality supervenes, and it starts to divide into matter, subject, and object. But then how can we have something which is unthinkable and unspeakable and devoid of all attributes? So a clue to this, or to this evolving, is the mention of two wands in occult metaphysics, again in the Secret Doctrine, and it's to do with the planes. So we have the first Parabrahm, which is on the unreachable plane of absoluteness and infinity, and then we have another plane. She tells us it's the second one, and this is on the plane of emanations, where things can start to happen, things can emanate and divide. So spirit or consciousness and matter are not independent realities, she says, but two facets or two aspects of the absolute. Now we have pre-cosmic matter, root substance. In Sanskrit, it's given the term mula prakriti, and that's the aspect of the absolute which underlies the objective planes of nature. It's pre-matter before it has actually coalesced into matter. So just as pre-cosmic ideation is the root of all consciousness, so pre-cosmic substance is a substratum of matter in the various grades of differentiation. And in the instructions to the esoteric section, HBB writes that to give the merest outline of the states of consciousness is the most difficult thing in the world, since the universe is embodied consciousness. And a knowledge of the states of consciousness means a knowledge of the planes of the universe and of all correspondences in the cosmos, solar system, and man. She also says that it must be always borne in mind that diagrams can only show one aspect of the truth, and that we must remember when we're dealing with all the definitions of these, that we're not dealing with watertight compartments, but we're dealing with graduated forces and states of consciousness. So I had a quick look at pre-cosmic ideation. as the root consciousness and pre-cosmic matter which underlies the material world. So we come to matter and cosmic substance as opposed to the pre-cosmic substance. And remember the opening comments about everything, even stones, being conscious. Everything's full of life. It's been stated before now that occultism does not accept anything inorganic in the cosmos. HBB tells us. The expression employed by science, inorganic substance, means simply that the latent life slumbering in the molecules of so-called inert matter is incognizable. All is life, and every atom of even mineral dust is a life, though beyond our comprehension and perception. That's amazing, really. Everything is life, and even the mineral dust is alive. This slide is of galaxy NGC 253. It's courtesy of NASA, and it's a galaxy undergoing a starburst, which is it's an intense episode of star formation, photographed by the Hubble Space Telescope. And we can see the bright yellow region in it, surrounded by dark clouds of gas and dust. And so it makes it sort of worlds in the making. However, I must actually add here that when the Mahatmas talk about the universe, they really are referring to our solar system only. However, I think that this picture shows what would have happened to this solar system during its creation. And I think it's a lovely way of thinking about cosmic dust and what it is. Because HBB talks about incandescent cosmic dust, and when physicality, material things are forming, which said the thought goes down, and then the particles follow magnetically as the iron filings follow the magnet, the directing thought of the creative forces. Yet this cosmic dust is something more, for every atom in the universe has the potentiality of self-consciousness in it, and is like the monads of Leibniz, a universe in itself and for itself. It is an atom and an angel. So besides the physical material cosmic substance, there's also non-material substance. There's Akasha, which is all around us. Now, Akasha is the medium in which everything is held and has many levels of density or vibration. Judith Tyberg in Sanskrit Keys to the Wisdom Religion tells us that Akasha is the fifth cosmic element, the element above, or rather within, all the other elements of earth, water, air, and fire. And it's derived from the root verb kas, meaning to shine. Hence, it's also called the shining substance. The Theosophical Glossary tells us that Akasha is the subtle, supersensuous, spiritual essence which pervades all space. It is the vehicle of divine thought, sound, or as the translated symbol of logos, speech, in its mystic sense. Akasha is the medium of the higher thoughts of mankind, the medium, apparently, by which mankind can communicate with the gods. It's sometimes called occult electricity, and is used in the carrying out of any magical or spiritual performance. It has been called by the Mahatmas the tablet of memory of the hierarchy of Dayan Chohans, as well as every spiritual ego. So this is very highest vibration. Now, Akasha has several levels, graduated from the highest vibrations down in density to the semi-physical. However, reading up about this, definitions are very confusing because the various glossaries, dictionaries, secret doctrine, and other things that HBB has written, they all vary. It's, you know, remember that sliding scale. It's very difficult to pin any of it down. So in some places, the different levels are called part of Akasha. In other places, Akasha just refers to the very highest. So we have, let's call it Akasha for the time being, the tablet of memory of the very highest, the hierarchy of the Dayan Chohans. Coming down in density, we have the astral light, and this is of a lower grade. And this is also called the tablet of memory, but this is the memory of the earth and of animal man. It's the medium onto which the Lipika, the divine recorders, impress on the, to us, invisible tablets of the astral light. It's what they call the great picture gallery of eternity, which is a record of every act and even thought of mankind, of all that was, is, or ever will be in the phenomenal universe. The lower level of this thing that surrounds us is ether. And HPB tells us in the proem of the Secret Doctrine that occult science recognizes 7 cosmical elements, 4 entirely physical, that's earth, air, fire, and water. And the 5th, she says, is ether, and it's semi-material, as it will become visible in the air towards the end of our 4th round, to reign supreme over the others during the whole of the 5th. The remaining 2 are as yet absolutely beyond the range of human perception. And this is interesting, again, referring back to Judith Tyberg, who says that Cass, it means to shine, hence the shining substance. And HPB saying it will become visible in the air towards the end of the 4th round. Now, I know some people who can see this already. It's there, it's shimmering in the sky. They've described it as sparks in the sky, which dance or whirl, especially on a clear blue day. And I've given this talk a few times now, and quite often somebody has come up to me at the end of the talk and said, I always wondered what that was. And so yes, it's becoming visible. It could be variously described. It might be what Wilhelm Reich described as orgone. It could be prana, the etheric aura of the earth. Who knows? It's there. It's fascinating. So let me move on to number 3. That the conscious universe is energized by cosmic electricity, or Fohat. This is the 3rd aspect of our conscious universe. And it's called cosmic electricity, not occult electricity, which is the description of Akasha. This is the cosmic. In Theosophy, we give it the Tibetan mystical name of Fohat, and it's the dynamic energy of cosmic ideation, cosmic life, vitality. And it's an amazing concept, powerful concept, and includes everything of a vibrant electrical nature throughout the universe. HBB tells us it's through Fohat that the ideas of the universal mind are impressed upon matter, and some faint idea of the nature of Fohat may be gathered from the appellation cosmic electricity sometimes applied to it. But to the commonly known properties of electricity must in this case be added others, including intelligence. Fohat is in reality everywhere. It runs like a thread through all and has its own 7 divisions with its own 7 subdivisions. Fohatic consciousness is a state of consciousness everywhere, she tells us in the esoteric instructions. In a poetic style in the Secret Doctrine, it's variously described as an emanation or the combined concentration of the Dhyani Buddhas. That's the top range of angels. And it's the messenger of their will, and it's personified. It has a large range of attributes, but it's another of those things which, when you actually look at it, it's quite difficult to define. In one place, HBB tells us, on the cosmic plane, Fohat is behind all such manifestations as light, heat, sound, adhesion, and is the spirit of electricity, which is the life of the universe. And then she goes on to talk about various Fohatic forces. Okay. She says the agitation of the Fohatic forces at the 2 cold ends, the north and south poles of the Earth, which result in a multicolored radiance at night, have in them several of the properties of Akasha, and then in brackets, ether, and that it has color as well as sound, because apparently this crackles. The aurora borealis and aurora australis, both of which take place at the very centers of terrestrial and magnetic forces. She says the 2 poles are said to be the storehouses, receptacles, and liberators, and at the same time of cosmic and terrestrial vitality, electricity, from the surplus of which the Earth, had it not been for these 2 natural safety valves, would have been rent to pieces long ago. But when we see the Earth's magnetic field and the way that the energies are dispersed around that, again, it's quite interesting. Fohat, cosmic electricity, is particularly important when the universe is being made. The cosmic dust is directed and coagulates by means of cosmic force. Again, I spoke earlier about Fohat, and it's following, like iron filings follow a magnet. Fohat hardens and scatters the 7 brothers, which means the primordial electric entity, for the Eastern occultists insisted that electricity is an entity. It electrifies into life and separates primordial stuff or pre-genetic matter into atoms, themselves the source of all life and consciousness. Fohat is the steed and thought is the rider, i.e. he is under the influence of the guiding thoughts of the Dhyani Buddhas. He passes like lightning through the fiery clouds, the cosmic mists. He lifts his voice and calls the innumerable sparks and atoms and joins them together. And this, again, taken by the Hubble Space Telescope, is a young star cluster. It's a brightly glowing star-forming cloud in N81 in a small satellite galaxy of the Milky Way, known as the small Magellanic Cloud. It's amazing here because her description of Fohat is the creation of the suns and planets. And I don't know about you, but when I was young, I was taught that space was a vacuum. And now we're sent so many amazing pictures of the formation of stars from the Hubble Space Telescope. It's Fohat in action. On a more down-to-earth scale, HBB tells us Fohat in its various manifestations is the mysterious link between mind and matter, the animating principle electrifying every atom into life. And not only on a universal scale, it's the mysterious link between mind and matter, the animating principle electrifying every atom into life. This is not only on a universal scale, but it's on the atomic scale as well, including the electrical impulses in our bodies and brains and all levels of our being. It's of interest to note, says HPB, that modern science, this is in 1887, that modern science has come to the conclusion that all cerebration and brain activity are attended by electrical phenomena. For years now, we've measured the electrical impulses of our neural networks by means of ECGs, electroencephalographs. So to recap then, the universe is embodied consciousness in which there is matter, cosmic substance, including Akasha, and that is all activated into life by phohatic activity. So let's have a look at the angelic or Davic aspects of the conscious universe. It's guided by the formless Dhyani, Devas, angelic forces, and it's recorded by the Lipika, the recording Dhyanis. It's all put into form by the builders, the Rupa Dhyanis, from suns and planets at the top end through to the tiny elementals who build the physical world at the lower end. And just a word about definitions. These are all names for the same thing. Dhyanis, that is the Buddhist way that they're described. Devas is the Hindu description, and angels, Jewish, Muslim, and Christian description. The whole universe with its various forces can be seen in terms of divine being, but in divine beings. It's an ancient poetic way of describing the forces of nature. Mahayana Buddhism, in its system, although many depictions of them, defines the Dhyani Buddhas essentially as metaphysical essences. I think this is a nice way to think of them and to describe them, and to bear in mind that they are metaphysical. HPB uses many of these labels in different languages, interchanging them throughout her writings and drawing in analogies of many different religions and belief systems. And it's a fascinating study. For example, we have the forces unfolding, and going back to that first fundamental proposition, we have an omnipresent, eternal, boundless, and immutable principle. And out of this, as I said before, in its second aspect, on the plane of emanations, things start to evolve, but they also evolve as angels, and it's a different way of describing how this happens. Because the first group of things, the first thing to evolve is the Logos. And this is the word of the Bible, the book of John, the divine Christos. In the Buddhist terminology, this level is described as Avalokiteshvara. And in another place, again, a very picturesque and poetic way of describing the birth of the universe in something which to me looks extremely like the Big Bang. It's described as the blazing divine dragon of wisdom, and it's a huge explosion of light and life. Now, from this particular force emanate the 7 top ranks of angelic beings. Or again, if we're talking about things like the Big Bang, colours, the 7 colours of the rainbow, and forces like this come out of it. Again, in the Buddhists, they're Dayan Chohans, or more specifically Dhyani Buddhas. In the Christian terminology, these first 7 angelic hosts equate to the archangels. And in the Hindu, they equate to 5, in this case, Hindu Panchasayam or Brahmas, who are regarded as the creators. HPB tells us the whole cosmos is guided, controlled, and animated by almost endless series of hierarchies of sentient beings, each having a mission to perform, and who, whether we give them one name or another, call them Dayan Chohans or angels, are messengers in the sense only that they are the agents of karmic and cosmic laws. They vary infinitely in their respective degrees of consciousness and intelligence. And all of these things, again, the angelic hierarchies, Akasha, Hoult, they descend from higher vibrational rates to lower vibrational rates, very often in series of 7s. HPB loves to divide everything into 7s. There's a Christian one. This is the Christian angelic hierarchy, as depicted in this 16th century drawing by Botticelli. It's based on Dante's Paradiso. Dante and his guide Beatrice stand in the foreground, and the circles of the 9 orders, 9 in this case, not 7, and the circles of the 9 orders of angels surround them. Now at the top, very lightly sketched, is the Trinity, but it's lovely. I love the way that she's sort of showing Dante, she's waving to them. So bearing in mind the comment earlier about these descriptions not being in watertight compartments, the whole cosmos, it's like it is on a sliding scale, and divisions overlap or blend into each other. And HPB describes it in her Secret Doctrine commentaries, which are a set of writings taken down when she was giving discussion groups. And the commentaries are a very interesting and useful way of finding out more about the background. So she says, the hosts of the Dhyani Buddhas evolve a lower set of Dhyani Buddhas, and these Dhyani Buddhas a third, and so on. She says, there are 7 of them. After that, they begin to be cosmocrators, the builders. Call them whatever names you like. They have all got special names in the Sanskrit. Then the builders of the astral light. She says, it's an endless hierarchy of one kind of Dhyanis, evoluting another kind of Dhyanis. Each one becomes more consolidated, more material, until it comes to the builders of this universe. So the builders, in the case of the builders, there are a huge range of these Davic forces, from those who shape suns and planets at the top end, through to the tiny elementals who build the physical world at the other. And these have also been widely depicted, and more recently, in the last century, the couple of people who in the first half of the century depicted these things was Geoffrey Hodgson and H.K. Challoner. Right, this then is taken from the book The Kingdom of the Gods. It's a mountain angel. It's painted by Ethelwyn M. Quayle. It's based on clairvoyant research carried out by Geoffrey Hodgson from 1921 to 1929 and painted with his detailed instructions. And this portrays the presiding angel of a mountain range. You can just see the mountain range below, which was observed above one of the high peaks of the Hottentots, Hollands Mountains in Cape Province, South Africa. And he says the central figure is at least 80 feet tall. This Pacific Archangel, also by Ethelwyn M. Quayle, is a magnificent ocean angel and was observed on the south coast of Java. He writes, occasionally it descends to the form worlds, assuming there a definite shape, somewhat as shown. Thus seen, it resembles some splendid sea god from classical mythology, riding the waves in a shell-like car. In the higher worlds, the angel is of immense stature. In the lower, the central form is some 30 feet tall. H.K. Challoner wrote books on occult subjects and also depicted Davic forms. This is from The Watcher of the Seven Spears, published in 1933. This is a builder of form. And there's descriptions, very poetic descriptions that run alongside each picture. The one for this, she writes, builders of form we come, thought hath compelled us. I am the matrix. Within my mind, the imaged thought shines clear. Through me, its life must come. We have a solar deva here, and the description of that is, I am a ray from our Lord, the Lord of light. Coming down in size, it's Hindu apsaras. They're water nymphs from the ceiling of an Indian palace, although more often they are portrayed as voluptuous dancers. Coming down in size again, this next one is Greensleeves, painted by Frank Eden, based on clairvoyant research carried out by Geoffrey Hodson on the psychic effects of music and with his detailed instructions. While the traditional tune is performed, an earth angel and nature spirits, which I can only refer to as the spirits of the earth, respond from well below ground. The angel pauses as if listening, then draws nearer to a distance of about 100 feet, then nearer again until it comes almost to the feet of the performers, all the while remaining impersonal to the last degree. And what I love about this one are the little tiny fairies, the little elementals that are portrayed. So, how relevant is this then to how we see and react with the conscious universe? We're told in the Theosophical writings that our life's object is to further our spiritual journey towards our becoming as the Mahatmas. Quote, to become co-workers with nature in the cyclic task. And we're all affected to some degree by these amazing forces, but mostly we're not aware of them in our everyday lives. We've grown up with it, and we're, for the most part, just not aware of it. But learning about Akasha, which surrounds and pervades us, Fohat, the dynamic cosmic electricity, and the angelic forces, helps us to realize that we are all energy beings. There are a mass of vibrating molecules, and each atom has life. So just consider the vibrational fields that we each have around us, our auras, extending beyond the confines of our physical body. And once we become conscious of this, there's a huge shift in attitude. And this is taken from Barbara Brennan's book, Hands of Light, which is a very interesting book and shows some absolutely beautiful auras and things. One way of looking at this, and which changes our perception, is to see this field around us then as not being emitted from the physical body, like a battery from a light bulb, although the electrical impulses are a little bit like a battery. But to think of us as being the energy field with denser layers as we get nearer the body, until finally the physical with the densest encases the central part. Now, realization of this, I think, leads to increased sensitivity and increased awareness. It means that we have energies received and in, and also has relevance to energies emitted out. So energies in, receive, we can feel things very subtly through our auras, that outer membrane with which we react with the outer world. In the voice of the silence, we're told to merge into one sense thy senses, that sense alone which lies concealed within the hollow of thy brain. And if you meditate, and you can start to feel things that are coming in through that outer membrane. Energies out, energies that emitted. We must have a sense of responsibility about the energies and thoughts we send out, as they are very definite things. And there's quite a long quote here, but it's an interesting one. It's the first letter of Kuthumi, of Master KH, to A.O. Hume, and it's dated November 1880. It's in the Mahatma Letters chronological edition. And Master KH describes exactly how thoughts are propelled and the energy behind them. And it's really quite an eye-opener when you realise what's going on. And most of the time, we are just completely unaware of it. So he writes, every thought of man, upon being evolved, passes into the inner world and becomes an active entity by associating itself, coalescing, we might term it, with an elemental, that is to say, with one of the semi-intelligent forces of the kingdoms. It survives as an active intelligence, a creature of the mind's begetting, for a longer or shorter period proportionate with the original intensity of the cerebral action which generated it. Thus, a good thought is perpetuated as an active, beneficent power, an evil one as a maleficent demon. And so man is continually peopling his current in space with a world of his own, crowded with the offspring of his fancies, desires, impulses, and passions. A current which reacts upon any sensitive or nervous organization which comes into contact with it in proportion to its dynamic intensity. The Buddhist calls this his skandha. The Hindu gives it the name of karma. The adept evolves these shapes consciously, and other people throw them off unconsciously. So we are building thought forms all the time. Now, HPB could feel negative thoughts coming to her, and say, yes, how we can become sensitive and feel things. It's best to put on some protection before we mix with other people. But HPB could feel these things coming to her. Countess Watchmeister, who they shared an apartment. She tells us in her little book, Reminiscence of H.P. Blavatsky and the Secret Doctrine, how HPB said to me one evening, you cannot imagine what it is to feel so many adverse thoughts and currents directed against you. It is like the prickings of 1,000 needles, and I have to be continually erecting a wall of protection around me. And oh gosh, you know, HPB having to create a wall of protection, goodness. Or one can send out light. Because of the vibratory quality of the different kinds of light held in Akasha, bright white light emanations can always turn away the darker, disruptive emanations. Judith Tyberg, that I referred to earlier, she tells us that when a man loves all things, as did the Buddha, he surrounds himself with Akashic substance, which becomes a protective shield which no malevolent influences can penetrate. So it's all in the vibrational wavelength. Also, Akasha gives a whole new meaning to the term World Wide Web. For this medium is here all around us, permeating us. It's humming, vibrating all the time. And HPB and the masters and all the higher beings, us if we want, are in constant communication through it. In the Mahatma letters, Master Kuthumi mentions how he feels the thoughts of AP Sinnett. During the last few months, he writes to him, especially when your weary brain was plunged in the torpor of sleep, your eager soul has often been searching after me, and the current of your thought been beating against my protecting barriers of Akasha, as the lapping wavelets against a rocky shore. And this type of communication is partly how the secret doctrine was written. Countess Watchmeister walked into HPB's writing room one day to find the floor strewn with sheets of discarded writing, and HPB complaining that she's written this out 12 times and each time Master says it's wrong. So Countess brought her a cup of coffee, and an hour later HPB called through to say she'd done it, and it was completed to satisfaction. So the Countess asked her how it was that she could make mistakes in setting down what was given to her. And HPB said, well, what I do is this. Okay. I make what I can only describe as a sort of vacuum in the air before me. I fix my sight and my will upon it, and soon scene after scene passes before me like the successive pictures of a diorama. Or if I need a reference or information from some book, I fix my mind intently on it, and the astral counterpart of the book appears, and from it I take what I need. Theosophical writings are full of instances of this kind of communication. Sometimes the thoughts or mental messages come through direct. Again, Master KH recounts in the Mahatma letters how, travelling back after personally visiting his chief, the head of his order, to discuss an aspect of Theosophical Society matters, he was crossing over to Ladakh on his way home and coming through the Karakoram when he saw an avalanche tumble. He says, just as I was taking advantage of the awful stillness which usually follows such cataclysm to get a clearer view of the present situation, I was rudely recalled to my senses. A familiar voice, as shrill as the one attributed to Saraswati's peacock, shouted along the currents. Olcott has raised the very devil again. The Englishmen are going crazy. Kuthumi, come quicker and help me. And it's HBB mentally calling to him. And he comments, I must say that the old lady's telegrams do strike one like stones from a catapult. That's rather nice. But how many times have we suddenly thought about someone whom we haven't heard or seen for some time? The phone rings and there's that person on the other end of the line. So vibrations through the Akashic web are happening all the time. Countess Watchmeister, commenting about her time with HB during the writing of The Secret Doctrine, she says, living in this atmosphere and coming into contact so continually with these usually unseen forces, all this seemed to be the true reality to me, and the outer world was that which appeared vague and unsatisfactory. And finally, to end with, there's another example of how these energies work. The conscious universe making itself known through a cuckoo clock. Countess Watchmaster writes, HPB had, however, distraction of a rather peculiar nature. In front of her writing table, attached to the wall, was a cuckoo clock, and this used to behave in a very extraordinary manner. Sometimes it would strike like a loud gong, then sigh and groan as if possessed, cuckooing in the most unexpected way. The little maid said, oh, this cuckoo almost speaks to me at times. And so it did. Countess says, one evening I went into the room and saw what appeared to me like streams of electric light coming out of the clock in all directions. And on telling HPB, she replied, oh, it's only the spiritual telegraph. They're laying it on stronger tonight on account of tomorrow's work. We'll leave it there then. Thank you.